Hey everybody, it's Jay and Nick. We are back from Eagles Canyon Raceway. They had kind of a rough year. They had the ice NATO, they had the thunder sleet, all the corner stations blew away. It's looking a little rough now.
I don't know, it looks good to me.
We had a hella sweet Maserati at this race, never said that before. And here's the secret, if you throw away the all aluminum exotic 4-cam Maserati engine, put in a 50-year-old Buick aluminum V8, the worst V8 ever made, by the way, you make the car infinitely better. They won Class C.
Also hella sweet was the return of the IROC Maiden. Now, the IROC Maiden is the car that used to be based in California, and the last time we saw it was at Thunderhill, and it got black flagged because it was shooting fire out the bottom of it, and the exhaust was too loud. And the team captain, Scott, said, dude, we just got black flagged for being way too metal.
So these guys, they moved to Texas, which is great. Texas has actually a lot of really interesting and really fun LeMons guys. I like seeing Roland Vaughn. It's always hilarious because we've got Roland Hahn, and then there's the racer Roland Vaughn, and they are almost identical. They both drive Jeep Cherokees. They are both prosperously proportioned gentlemen. It's pretty fun to watch those guys hanging out.
Yeah, when you see them together, they're totally like an 80s buddy cop show.
Roland and Roland. Org choice was Mullet Motorsports. I love these guys. They were first timers. They totally got it. They had a bunch of problems with their cage, but they went off and they fixed them without complaining.
Yeah, so these guys, they misread the $500 cap rules slightly. They thought that suspension was exempt and brakes count towards the $500 total.
The opposite of what is actually true.
Yeah, and so the opposite is true, but what they did was they spent thousands on the Beltec G-Body Phase 2 road race handling kit and no money on brakes. So they got a ton of penalty laps for their expensive Beltec stuff, and they couldn't stop.
And how did the car handle?
So bad. That brings us to Heroic Fix that went to the Rambler. Now, most of you guys already know the story, but a little quick background. The Rambler is the latest LeMons car that's being passed around the country from team to team like a bad case of the clap. And the first time this was done, it was a K car, and it went around the country for an entire LeMons season.
Yeah.
And it was so bad, by the end, had it been refined? No. It just looked like that it had been wrenched on by 87 different monkeys.
27 different groups of idiots.
And nothing lined up, and it was awful.
Yeah.
And the Rambler is following in that car's footsteps.
Yeah. So this time out, the theory of the latest group of guys was, all right, we're going to get rid of all of this Rambler stuff. Now, it worked. Not well, but it did work. We're going to get rid of all of that stuff because we're going to put in a whole bunch of universal modern parts so you can fix this car anywhere, and it's going to handle great and it's going to dominate. So they put in a Pinto motor, a hot rod Pinto motor, and a 5-speed gearbox out of something, and a Mustang 2 hot rod front end, and all of this super trick stuff that was supposed to make this car basically fixable.
Yeah, so their whole idea of making this thing universal went out the window on like minute 2 of arriving at the track when they had to fabricate custom brake lines. They had custom exhaust, custom firewall. They had to...
Their clutch was a push, but the clutch on the car was a pull.
They had 2 sets of wheel studs.
Yeah.
The back was metric and the front was regular.
Really
and so they wound up having to pull lug nuts off of a Nissan Versa rental car to use only in the back. And so the whole idea of being universal, hey, I can go to any Craig in any town in America and fix this car, I think that needs a little bit of refinement.
Corey Dickman took it out, and he came back and he said, look, dude, this is the most terrifying thing I've ever driven in my life.
Yeah, well, and the reason for that was the front wheels are going like this because their new Ford Granada hubs, totally off-the-shelf universal parts, didn't fit their wheels, and so they had Dave Montoya take an angle grinder to the inside of the wheels.
When Dave Montoya is refining your cars, you have problems.
Man. Anyway, the car was broken. They fixed it. We gave them the heroic fix, but man, they brought all of that upon themselves.
So true. Judge's choice was the Sticky Bandits and their miserable Oldsmobile Cutlass.
So miserable.
Now these guys, they were at Houston before, and their cage was a complete disaster. They rebuilt it overnight. So, we already like these guys. This time, they brought the car. The only thing that they changed, and this car was miserable. The only thing they changed, they took out the crappy V6, and they put in a crappy V8. Now, usually, the result of that is you just go off the corner even faster. Kind of worked on these guys. They went around, they got a lot of laps. They didn't bug anybody, they didn't crash. So there you go.
Okay, I Got Screwed went to Orca Racing, which, speaking of bringing things upon themselves, they have a two-car team with a Cadillac CTS and a Porsche 914. So they're off to a bad start already. The Cadillac in particular also ran at Houston, blew up, never ran, and they figured, we got to get rid of this CTS motor. It's out of an Opel or whatever GM had sitting on the shelf that week. And we're going to use something from a GMC pickup. The transmission had either a missing third gear or the computer couldn't figure out why to shift it. So anyway, it didn't have third gear. It did have second and fourth. And so one of the drivers pioneered a technique of like, hey man, where it right before that, you just tap the gas like this, and then it'll trick it and shift it into fourth. The car would come around the corner, and whip it, beep.
So the special award was LeMons the Way It Should Be. And so these guys, first timers, read the rules, brought a true LeMons car. I mean, they had like $480 left in the budget on this.
Yeah, and when it showed up, I mean, the LeMons judges, as you know, are connoisseurs of real awful cars like this. And when it showed up, Judge Steve said, oh man, is that a Duster? And Judge Sajeev says, no way, man, that's a Sundance. And I'm like, hey man, what is this? Like, it's a 94 Shadow. And oh!
They were out there going about 14 miles an hour in this horrible thing. Amazingly, it didn't blow up. I like these guys.
That just brings us to the Index of Effluency, and this is kind of a Lifetime Achievement Award. So if you guys follow this channel, which
all three of you,
none of you really do, so I'll give you a little bit of background. These guys, Rotson Racing, they have a Datsun B210 that has a period fiberglass body kit that you could buy.
So awesome.
Called the B210ZX, and they bought it from some guy who was like, oh yeah man, this was like, I was gonna build a supercar and I never really got around to it. It had been sitting in his driveway since 1981. They pulled it out, they put in a modern 240SX motor, and
because that's gonna make all the difference.
Yeah, and they some really pretty amazing looking suspension upgrades to the leaf springs and whatever.
Because that's gonna make all the difference.
And on paper, it's a simple sort of truck-like chassis with a reasonably reliable and reasonably powerful engine. It should have worked. Well, 9 races later, it finally did halfway okay. And for that, they're well deserving of the Index of Effluency.
Let me just add here, by the way. I was talking to Brian Pollock, another one of these Texas racers, in the paddock of this race. He said, man, I saw over in San Diego on eBay, there was this body kit for a first generation RX-7 that made it look like a Corvette. But I didn't buy it because, how that just wouldn't have been cool. I'm like, dude, you have to leave the paddock now.
Wouldn't have been cool how?
It's my point exactly. Here's LeMons in a nutshell.
I am not able to sign up properly. It cannot be done because I do not have a computer that goes on the internet.
I had the line. I swear, the line. I had the line.
Yeah! Oh! Do it again!
Faster, faster!
Do it again!
Yeah!
Harder!
Yeah, harder!
Harder! Harder!
Oh,
yeah!
yeah!
Oh yeah!
Yeah.
Slow down!